Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton. We are 39 days away from kickoff, closer and closer, just a little over a month, guys. So tell us who your favorite number 39 is. Tell us where you're checking in from, what you're drinking. Get your questions in. Bobby's already raising his hand. He has a favorite 39. Let's see who he has.
I just texted him. It's Brian Robeson. I
Look,
texted him to tell him it's 39 days left.
I know, no offense to Brian and the former 39s, but the most important 39 in Texas history may be Michael Kern this year.
The punter.
The freshman punter.
Oh, man. Well, let's jump right into it, guys. Recruiting, some stuff going on there. I know we touched on it a little bit yesterday, Jerry, but what's the latest?
Yeah, so Texas getting ready for the big Thursday event, recruiting event called Pool Party. It's not a big event, not like a junior day with 100, 150 kids. It's nothing like that. It's working to get some targets back on campus possibly, and then some 2026 guys. I think we had a graphic from that yesterday. There you go. Michael Terry, Jonah Williams, obviously the two big names. J.J. Hahn, 2025. He'll be a four-star guy after senior tape comes out. He's a D lineman from Rancho Santa Margarita who's originally from Berlin, Germany, offered by a lot of programs, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, everybody like that in early June. Texas offered him June 4th. That recruitment will play out a while. Obviously, Nick Townsend will be on campus commitment, KJ Lacey commitment. A lot of the commitments will not be on campus because it's a Thursday event and parents are working, right? I mean, everybody can't get there on a Thursday. This is not a weekend recruiting event necessarily. So some kids may trickle through, but the big event's on Thursday. Then some of the 2026s, Diabell will be back on campus. Obviously, the Texas quarterback commitment. And then, Chris Stewart, the other commitment in 2026. Jordan Clay was very good at Texas Elite Camp. Jamarian Carlton, who earned an offer. The other, Jamarian Vincent from Connolly, the DB, earned an offer. We've gone through this list. Javian Osborne, probably the top running back on the board in state in 2026. And I posted on Texas football yesterday, kind of a list of summer decisions remaining and fall decisions. And Nick Brooks kind of was right on that line because he's a mid to late December or a mid to late September decision, which that September 22nd, I guess, is technically the start of fall. So we'll see if Nick Brooks commits before or after that. But then, I've mentioned again, Texas is staying in contact. And I put up a flips list, guys that Texas would love to just, have a shot at. Josiah Sharma, Myron Charles. Texas has remained in contact with those guys. Other colleges have too, by the way. So these recruitments continue. There's a long time until signing day. I don't have any doubts that Texas will try to get some of those committed guys on campus. We'll see if they're successful with that Thursday and early in the season, I would say.
Hey, Jerry, you're talking about some potential surprises for this weekend. You're kind of motivating, hinting around it. Do you think there could be some surprise visitors this weekend? Would you give it a better than 50-50 shot, or you're kind of monitoring it right now?
Yeah, I'm monitoring it because, look, I mean, there's been a couple of guys that were scheduled to come in literally night before, morning before plans got canceled. So
yeah,
let's kind of wait and see what happens here. There's a lot, the hardest thing these kids have, the most difficult task in front of these kids is saying no, right? So that's the thing. But look, I mean, there's been plane tickets bought for a couple of prospects this year, and the trip didn't happen night before, day of. So these things happen in recruiting. You just got to keep chipping away. But Texas will stay on those A-list targets. I mean, if there's anything, I think we learned initially about Steve Sarkisian's recruiting strategy at Texas, and the Texas fan base has learned, is that signing day is in December.
Hey, I want to add this, if you don't mind. Texas also looking at some other guys visiting elsewhere this coming week. Aiden Anding, we talked about that one, Jerry, the defensive back out of Ruston. He's expected to go down to LSU this weekend. Longhorns still recruiting him heavily. We're waiting to see what's going on with Nathan Tillman, young man out of Mansfield, Timberview, Utah. expected to be the choice at this time a little bit over Texas, in my opinion. That's as of right now. Things could obviously change, but that's what I'm hearing behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And then also, Jerry, I would add this, don't forget about DJ Sanders out of Belleville. I was laughing because Brian Robeson, who I just mentioned the Open, just bought a ranch, big piece of property down in Belleville. And I told him, hey, the Longhorns are recruiting a defensive lineman from there the other day. And so literally, guys, a lot of other things going on. We're waiting to see if DJ Sanders takes a midweek visit to Texas or to A&M, or maybe even goes up to Michigan this week. We shall see. Not a lot of news coming out of that camp right now for one of the few defensive linemen the Longhorns really remain in on right now.
Well, guys, yesterday we talked about the SEC all-conference offensive and defensive players. But one thing that we didn't get to is the preseason or predicted order of finish. And I'm going to go ahead and put that list up here. Georgia, number 1, Texas, number 2. I don't think there's any surprise with those top 2 teams. But then Alabama, Ole Miss, LSU, Missouri, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Auburn, Kentucky, Florida, South Carolina, Arkansas, Mississippi State, and last but not least, Vanderbilt. Any surprises on where from 3 down are?
Here's what I would say that I really find interesting and follows along with a lot of what my thinking has been. Georgia is a prohibitive favorite. They're clearly number 1. They're up by 300 points or so on Texas. But look at Texas, Alabama, and Ole Miss all bunched together within 100 to 200 points of one another. That's that second tier. And then LSU at 5, all the way down to Oklahoma at 2,000. They're all bunched. That 5 through 8 group are all within 200 points of one another, 300 points of one another. Then the next group is Texas A&M, followed by Auburn, Kentucky, Florida. I guess what I'm saying is, at least from a media perspective right now, Jerry, there's segmentation going on about where expectations lie. Texas, anywhere from 2nd to 4th in the SEC out of the gate in its first conference year in the conference.
Well, they're picked 2nd everywhere, but I don't know if we bring that back up, Blake. I want to go through this real quick. So I think there's some tiers in the SEC. First of all, this year, I think Georgia's tier 1. I think Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss is tier 2. I think Tennessee, Missouri, maybe LSU, maybe Texas A&M, maybe Oklahoma. Those are your tier 3s. Then I think the tier 4s are below that: Auburn, Kentucky, Florida, and then I think that last tier is probably correct. But some initial thoughts is Texas. If you believe the media poll, Texas has a great schedule: Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Florida, Kentucky, Texas A&M. Pretty good. You don't play 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a good place to be if the media poll is close to correct. The other thing I would say there, Florida Gators picked 12th. Talent-wise, they're top 6 or 7. That's not reflective of talent on roster for me. No way that they're that low talent-wise in their roster. Not possible. I don't believe it. Been doing this too long. Knows too many of those kids. I would have Missouri over LSU going into the season. I know Nussmeier, a good player. Missouri has Brady Cook, all 3 receivers, tight end back. They're going to score points on people, and Drinkwitz has already proven that he's kind of exceeding expectations. So why wouldn't he do it with a senior quarterback? That's something to think about to me. A&M should be over Oklahoma for me. I think their defensive front is much more SEC like to me. I think Connor Weigman's health will be very important for A&M. Their offensive line is going to hold the key of their season, which may well for Oklahoma too, by the way, with a first-year starting quarterback. But interesting there. But then, you also look at this: 2nd-year starting quarterback Carson Beck, 3rd-year starting quarterback Quinn Ewers, 2nd-year starting quarterback Jalen Milroe, 3rd-year Dart. Obviously, Nussmeier is a first-year starter, then 3rd-year Brady Cook. So at the top, a lot of quarterback experience as well. But I think Georgia's the prohibitive favorite. I do, and I say that to say this: they have 3 tough road games against really good offensive-minded coaches: Kalen DeBoer, Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin. So I'll say what I've been saying about Georgia the whole time. If they win all three of those games, you kind of tip your hat and move on. But that's 3 tough road games for a very talented team that against 3 of the brighter offensive minds in college football, maybe the 3 brightest, arguably, right? So that'll be interesting what Georgia has going for them in those games. Their offensive line will travel, and they're going to have the best offensive line in the country.
Not a lot of argument, Jerry, on the bottom 4 on that list. I mean, they're literally, I think that's one of the more interesting things. South Carolina, Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt. Texas plays the bottom 3.
Yep.
I mean, when people talk about Texas having a easier SEC schedule, that's what they mean.
And 2 of those are on the road. They don't play Georgia and Florida on the road. They got a great schedule in year 1.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that are great, Jerry, why don't you tell folks out there about Gooder?
Yeah, so look, I wore the Gooders in the ocean in Florida when I was there a couple of weeks ago. I wear them out if I'm walking. The times I do get to ride the bike nowadays, I wear the Gooders. Why? No slip, no bounce, all polarized, all fun. And if they fall off in the ocean and they float away, $25 a pair, right? That's all good news. That's all great news. They also come with a 1-year warranty, 30-day free returns, which you won't need. I mean, I don't even know why I said that. That's worthless to say. I just wasted 4 seconds of your time. But here's the deal. New product launch, the Retro G. Check them out. New vintage-inspired shades. As always, these won't slip or bounce. The Retro Gs are available in 4 colors, and I'm not a Retro G. We're talking about this. Our favorite name of the bunch, Threaten Me with a Good Time, which we certainly do it on Texas Football. So if you want to support the show and try a pair, Gooder is giving On Texas, all caps, listeners free shipping. You can go to gooder.com, On Texas, all caps, and use On Texas, all caps for free shipping. Gooder offers a 30-day money-back guarantee and 195,000% satisfaction. Again, that's gooder.com, On Texas, all caps for free shipping.
I've never noticed your eyebrows before today, Jerry. Your eyebrows were peeking out outside the glasses there. I was like, man, Jerry's got some big eyebrows.
Okay. Bobby, you recently posted an article over on Texas Football, and I say recent as of this morning, titled Better or Worse. And you basically went down the list position by position and talking about, stock up, stock down type deal. And I kind of want to go over that here, and we'll start at the offense. And I think quarterback's pretty much self-explanatory. I don't think anybody can argue you set up on that, but I'm going to let y'all discuss first.
Yeah, Jerry and I did a video on it yesterday, and I thought maybe I could go a little bit more in depth, even if I wanted to, on the website. I think that quarterback is self-explanatory. The only loss there is Malik Murphy. And Malik Murphy did, it is a loss of sorts. It's a backup quarterback that led Texas to 2 victories, or at least was a big part of 2 victories. That being said, it's overridden by year 3 of Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning gaining another year in the college system. I just think that of all the positions on the field, I'm most sure about being better this year than last year, it's quarterback. The question that's unique here, and this is where Jerry and I always talk about, is how much better. Like if they are literally just a little bit, if Quinn's just a little bit better, I don't know if Texas is going to win 11 games. If Quinn's a lot better, I think the sky's the limit. So we've talked about this, whether it was with Coach Shipley or a number of different people. But Quinn Ewers is going to be a key to this team. His 3rd year starting is big, I think, but the position itself should be up.
Yeah, so look, a couple things. Quinn Ewers, year 2 to year 3. Now, I think year 1 to year 2 is your biggest jump in college football. Then I think that's a bigger jump. Then you have more of the gradual progression. So I think that obviously is big. 3 years in Sark's system with a bunch of new receivers. he's going to get them on the same page with him instead of they all have to get on the same page together. I think that's happened a little bit in Quinn's first year for sure, and a little bit year 2, but not much. But Quinn's in full control of the scheme now, and him and Sark are fully on the same page. That normally happens year 3 with these starting quarterbacks, and that's why Ole Miss has a chance to be really good. And don't underestimate Missouri. But then with Arch, the other thing there is he brings a different athleticism to the position if he has to play. Texas, Quinn is a functional athlete, the quarterback position. By the way, that's not a detriment. That's just is what it is. A functional athlete at the quarterback position. That can be taken as a compliment for those wondering. Arch Manning is a plus athlete at the quarterback position as far as pocket passers go. Not a dual threat guy. You're not going to no Sark's not QB run gaming guys design plays, but he's a plus athlete at that position. So last year when Quinn went down, Malik Murphy's not that. And Malik was more of the most pocket passer, strictly pocket passer of all the Texas quarterbacks. So up front, you had to have great protection around him to give him time to throw the football. If something happens with Quinn this year, and I say if because the last 2 years something has happened with Quinn, and Arch is in the game, you get more of an athlete with athletic movement skills at the quarterback position, which could be key in the conference you're playing in, by the way. And that's what I like about KJ Lacey and Diabell moving forward in the SEC is they're more than functional athletes.
Next on the list, you had a running back, and you said was down mainly due to the loss of Jonathan Brooks. Of course, Texas lost Jonathan Brooks at the end of the season there, but can you go a little more in-depth on that, and why did you say down?
Yeah, Jerry and I disagreed on this slightly in the video, and I've thought about this, and I still look. Jonathan Brooks last year, he was a premier running back as a runner, as a pass protector, and as a pass catcher. I mean, he was a triple threat last year, in my opinion. Who would you rather throw it to on that throwback screen? Jonathan Brooks, the way he could weave through traffic, accelerate, still make people miss, glance off a tackle. Now Jaden Blue's really good at that too because of his just outright speed. He runs past blockers sometimes. But really, Texas had a do-it-all back. I'm not sure that they have that one guy this year. Cedric Baxter is the most likely to be able to run inside, run outside, pass protect, catch the ball, etc. But I don't know that he's as good as Jonathan Brooks was a year ago. And then you have someone in Jaden Blue who, frankly, at the end of last year, really, really came on to where you knew he's going to be a piece of the puzzle this year. And Jaden Blue may be the best touchdown scorer Texas has on the team right now, by the way. I want to put that out there. But I just think it's going to be a little bit down. And I know that they also have Trey Wisner behind them. They have some pieces, but I just can't get over the fact how good Jonathan Brooks was a year ago. And I don't see a single back at Texas duplicating that this year.
Yeah, so I was where Bobby and I were a little different on this. I think Jonathan Brooks had a great year. But again, I kind of look at the guys year 1 to year 2. If Cedric Baxter makes a big year 1 to year 2 jump, like a lot of players do in college football, then he's definitely a different player. Now he's got to stay healthy. You can say that about anybody though. We just talked about that with Quinn. So he's got to stay healthier. He'll have nicks. It's a running back. He's got to stay healthier this year in year 2 than he did in year 1. But what Texas does have this year, which I think will be interesting as the season plays out, Jaden Blue can play slot receiver. You can have both those guys on the field more together. And Jaden Blue's more of like Bijan ability as a pass catching running back to where you can run him down the field. You saw it in the spring game, whether it's a deep slant in, cross, whatever. You can do things down the field with him in the passing game that Texas didn't have last year at the running back position of the guys that played. Jonathan Brooks, it was not that. Cedric Baxter is not that. Those are guys who are going to catch it close to the line of scrimmage. Like Bobby said, the throwbacks, screen game, that sort of stuff, check down stuff, safe check downs. But Jaden Blue gives you a different versatility. And Trey Weiser could too a little bit, by the way. We'll have to see how Sark uses him in his snaps. But you have a different pass game ability with the running backs. But the whole key for me is how big of a jump does Cedric Baxter make? And Jaden Blue, with ball in hand consistency, does he take a big step? If both those guys take a big step, it'll be interesting to see a look back on this right now headed into the season. Obviously, before the season last year, we thought Jonathan Brooks would be good, but nobody thought he'd win the Doak if he didn't get hurt. So there's a little bit of that element. It'll be fun to watch that position.
Hey, I would add this. When I said down, I meant marginally down. That's the one thing that people need to understand. Just because it's up and down, there are degrees to which you think somebody's going to be a position will be better or worse. And I think that I think it'll be slightly down or marginally down just because they don't have that single guy. But I get what Jerry's saying. He's not wrong. It's just a difference of opinion.
But the question is in the SEC, would the Brooks-Baxter combo have been better in year one than the SEC? That's going to be something we look back on. It'll be interesting to see.
More physical.
Yeah.
Wide receiver was next. And you put down on there Worthy and Mitchell, obviously huge losses. But my question to you guys is the potential there for that group to be even better at the end of the season?
Individually, no.
Right.
Group-wise, different. Texas can put more speed on the field this year than they could even last year. And that's why I've been harping on. This is a faster team, fastest team Sark's had. He said that at SEC Media Days. Because, look, Xavier Worthy, tremendous player. A.D. Mitchell, tremendous player. Jordan Whittington, very good player in his role, right? Outside of that, Sark he played those three guys. He's got a little more at his disposal this year in terms of I can put the fastest team on the field possible. I could go throw out Isaiah Bond, Silas Bolden, and Ryan Wingo with Amari Niblack and Jaden Blue and say, all right, you better bring the house because you aren't defending these guys. So you better get to my quarterback. So it's going to be interesting to see the group as a whole. Worthy, nobody's as good as Worthy on this team. I don't think anybody's as good as A.D. Mitchell from this standpoint. What A.D. Mitchell brought to Texas that was so important was big play in big game experience. And that has to be proven out. And I know people say Isaiah Bond's catch against Auburn, not close to the same. A.D. Mitchell had a touchdown catch in all 4 playoff games, 2-time national champion.
Five playoff games.
Five. So think about the plays that guy made, the catch at TCU, the big plays, key moments. The dude had a knack for it. So somebody's got to step up on this receiver core to be that guy for us to even have a conversation about last year and this year to me.
Look, my take on that is Xavier Worthy ran a 4.21. A.D. Mitchell ran a 4.36. You're not going to get more speed on the field than that. Despite this, I will take a big leap here, Jerry, and say that I've said this before. A couple of things. One is Ryan Wingo. I think is the best all around receiver Texas has signed since Roy Williams. I still believe that. Okay, he's only a freshman though. But I'm going to go a step further. Top to bottom, this is the best receiver group, the most quality receiver group Texas has ever had, ever, in my 30-plus years of doing this. 1 to 8 or 1 to 7, whatever the number is, that's the most quality group they've ever had. I don't have any qualms about saying that. I think that Roy Williams, Sloan, BJ, Tony Jeffrey, that was a great group, right? These guys, I think, are more talented than that group as a whole. And so that's the one place where I would come a little different than a lot of people, Jerry and Blake. I actually think this may be the most talent in a receiver room at Texas in modern history. not only with Ryan Wingo, just the whole thing. Now, are they as good as Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell individually at this point in their careers? I don't think so.
And then next up, guys, we're going to jump over to tight end. Obviously, a big loss with JT Sanders and moving on to the NFL. But you put same, Bobby. This was the only same for the offense, but you're pretty high on Amari Niblack.
I think that Jatavian Sanders is a good player. I really do. I think he's a solid player. I think he was not a good blocker, however. And I don't think he had elite speed. And while he had great hands, he did not necessarily have a huge catch radius, right? So my take on this is I actually think with Gunnar Helm moving a year forward and continue. I mean, Gunnar Helm has done nothing but improve since the day he got on campus. With him and Amari Niblack, I actually think Texas is going to be the same out of the gate. And by the end of the year, I would be surprised if, as long as they're healthy, if Texas isn't better at tight end than they were a year ago. Because I think Niblack has that much talent.
Yeah, so we kind of get blown up for saying this because people say, well, you're talking about JT Sanders now that he's not here. But look, yeah. I think it's going to be in a negative way. I think it's going to be much better. I'll go on record. I think Gunnar Helm in his last year, I think Amari Niblack in his third college year, I think he made a jump from not much to pretty good at Alabama. But I just think, look, I think JT Sanders, what JT's strength was, what the level of A.D. Mitchell, but he had a knack for tough catches, big plays, key situations. So somebody's got to step up there. But look, Amari Niblack is a different level athlete. And I think he's a more willing blocker. I'm not going to say much better, but a more willing blocker. He's physically a stronger player too. But his speed brings a different element to what Sark can do. And most people think speed of running down the seam and a linebacker chasing him or safety trying to close ground on him. I think about that, but not necessarily all of that. I think about a guy that's a vertical threat at the tight end game. What can you do with him in the screen game? Because people are worried about him vertically and fast receivers around him. How does it all mesh together? So I think Gunnar Helm, Niblack, Juan Davis, year 4. Jordan Washington's a talented kid, obviously. But I think as a whole, I think this group's going to be much better than last year. And that's not a knock. I mean, JT Sanders, tremendous player, 100 catches. Wasn't a high-level blocker. That kind of got Quinn hurt in the Houston game. So I think you're going to be better at that position, and by mid-year, considerably better.
I like what look. I don't think I could be convinced that I'm inaccurate on this. The one thing that you mentioned there, two things that you mentioned that I originally didn't contemplate: the screen game, and Niblack in the screen game could be better than and more effective than JT Sanders because he runs better. Okay. Here's another thing that I think he could be better in the screen game on, actually as a blocker than JT Sanders. Because the one thing he is definitely, he's not only faster than JT Sanders, he's quicker than JT Sanders. So he will get out on blocks quicker than JT Sanders. And those little bubble screens that Texas likes to run, whether it's to, Silas Bolden or Isaiah Bond or John Tate, whomever. I think he'll be a more effective blocker in space than JT. And look, we're not piling on a 4th-round draft pick.
No.
By the way, give me a break.
It's a good sign.
Great Longhorn. So it's just you got to nitpick sometime if you're gonna grade one versus another. And so that's where we're going with this stuff.
Well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, you want Sarkisian to keep elevating the talent in the program. And if we're talking about a guy that potentially, or I believe, is a more gifted player than Jatavian Sanders, that's actually a good thing for Texas.
And the last one on the offense, guys, the offensive line, Texas, of course, only lost one player from there last year in Christian Jones. And you say it's on the way up, Bobby.
Yeah, I think Jerry and I both agree with this, and I think we have the same reasoning. And that is, yes, they lose Christian Jones, who was a 3-year starter. A lot of talent there. I think Christian Jones will eventually be a starter in the NFL. They're going to replace him with Cam Williams, who's a 3rd-year guy. But really, the piece that is huge to me is Texas is now not 1 deep at offensive line. They are the guys in that class of beef when they had 7 guys signed. All 7 of them, by the way, are doing well. Just amazing. That tells you how well and how good Kyle Flood evaluated that recruiting class. But now NATO is ready. Cole Hudson, of course, has been ready, but he's healthier. Malik Ogbo is being used as a tight end. Connor Robertson's your backup center. All of those guys are now juniors. That it's come to fruition. What we thought might happen, it's happening. And I just don't think there's any chance that if they get dinged, other than Kelvin Banks, I'll say this, other than Kelvin Banks getting injured, which you can't replace an All-American left tackle. Those just don't happen. Even if you have Trevor Gooseby or Jaden Chapman or Brandon Baker waiting in the wings, those guys just don't happen every day. Other than that, if an injury occurs on the Texas offensive line, I don't think it's this huge, oh no, what are we going to do? Kyle Flood has an answer. And I don't think there's any doubt that because of that, this team should be better this year. This offensive line should be better with one caveat, and that's injury, because they've been extraordinarily healthy on the offensive line the last 2 years.
I'll say this. For offensive line, my first thought is they better be better. They're going to play against much better defensive line play overall. So much better front sevens over the course of a season. So they better be, 1. 2, I think my whole opinion on this hinges on the right side, as I've said, in pass protection. DJ Campbell, year 2 as a starter, should be improved there. And not more comfortable, let's say that. Cam Williams, year 1, telling you, if he has a good year in pass pro, he's going to be good in the run game. If he has a good year in pass pro, he may be a one-and-done guy. It happened with the Marius Mims at Georgia. He started 8 games in his college career, went late first round. You're talking about that level of talent, and I'm not saying, don't sit here and say, as Jerry said, Cam Williams is going to be a first-round pick. I'm saying he has the ability to rocket up draft boards. Well, that could be first or second. I don't know. That depends on his play. But talent-wise, he's on that level. He's that gifted. He's just got to go put it on the board. But if he puts it on the board, this is what I always say. You want all these guys to play like the first, second, or third-round draft pick, because if they do, you've had a great season on the field. If Cam Williams has a decision to make after this year, chances are Texas had a pretty good season on the field. I mean, that's the best way I could put it. But I think another reason Texas line's going to be better is I think you have Cole Hudson, hopefully back healthy, quality player when he's healthy, struggled with health a little bit, like a lot of guys have that are injured. And Neto now in year 3. I think you're going to see those guys play more, rotate more a little bit. I think it wouldn't necessarily shock me to see, if you're in the red zone run of football, have a substitution on the interior offensive line sometimes. That wouldn't shock me. I'm not sitting there saying it's for sure going to happen. It wouldn't shock me. But I think there's better depth. The depth's a year older. You can withstand injury better. But this is all going to come down to the right side and how they are in pass pro. And you're gonna find out where they're at in week 2, because Michigan's going to bring it at them.
Good stuff, guys. So that concludes the offense. We'll get to defense here in just a second. But first, Bobby, tell folks out there about our newest sponsor, BetterHelp.
Yeah, this episode of On Texas Football is brought to you by the folks at BetterHelp. There are a lot of helpful apps out there, but it would be difficult for any of them to be more useful to some than BetterHelp.com. BetterHelp is an app that helps those in need to find the help they need and deserve. Maybe you're having personal issues that you just can't figure out. Maybe you get caught up comparing yourself to someone else. Maybe you've experienced major trauma or recently lost a loved one. Whatever the case may be, if you're considering beginning therapy as an option, you'll want to check out BetterHelp.com. BetterHelp is entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. So no matter what your own previous experience with therapy is, Check out betterhelp.com today. Stop comparing yourself. Start doing something about it. Visit betterhelp.com/OnTexas today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/OnTexas for 10% off your first month. Good luck to those who use BetterHelp.
Hey, Blake, let's answer a super chat before we head to defense. It's a good, it's halftime. It's halftime. The band is on the field.
It is halftime. We
Relapse
got 2 of them.
Society. Does Sark think this team is better than last year, more confident? I think he does. Based on his comments at the SEC media days and kind of what we'd heard a little bit behind the scene, I think he does believe that. I mean, look, you don't come out and say at SEC media days with everybody watching where it's going to be clipped and played continuously. I think this is should be the best team we've had at Texas. I mean, he said it, right? My ears aren't bad, right?
Here's my problem. He doesn't have a get out of jail free card in Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell this year.
Yeah, but he did say it, right?
He did that. But okay. Look, you have that, and you have Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat. One of the overall points in this whole exercise of better or worse for me year over year is thinking to myself, Texas had 11 players drafted last year, is that right? And went to the college football playoff. Yet we have Steve Sarkisian up here at the mic at SEC Media Days saying he has a better team.
I'm on it with him.
But this is the issue, Jerry. If that's not you and I going, what does he really have here that for him to say that is it's kind of eye-opening, because if he's right, I mean, what is this means Texas is not going to be a one-hit wonder, and they're building this thing the right way for the long haul. And that's what we all want. And we got to see if it happens this year. But Freelance Society, there's no question Jerry's right. Steve Sarkisian thinks he has a better team, or at least he's acting like he does. And this is a team that was in the Final Four a year ago, won the Big 12. So
look, the reason you have to say Sark is being 100% genuine and does believe he has a better team. What was the first thing we noticed last year when practices started in August? How confident he was.
Yep.
He was proven to be right last year. So he thinks this year's group, and I agree with him on paper. There's so many things that go into it, health, blah, 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 all things that go into it, right? But I can see why he believes that. You have a third-year starting quarterback, I think probably better at not probably. Never mind. Let's keep going. Offensive line is more mature. You have a third straight top 5 recruiting class, so your speed and depth is better. You did very well in the portal in terms of wide receiver, Makuba upgrade at safety. Some things that happened in the portal there. Anthony Hill, Malik Muhammad, some of these young guys, Cedric Baxter are now in year 2, which the staff absolutely loves all those guys. A guy like Jaden Blue, who, honestly, Texas kind of took a chance on the guy. He was highly ranked. Then he didn't play as senior in high school. They stuck with him. They let him get through his growing pains, the developmental process there with him. You've had some players there that they feel very confident in their player development at Texas. So I'm not surprised he thinks this could be a better team than last year. And then they got to go do it. And I also think he thinks there's buy-in, because the one thing he said that I think really makes him believe this, outside of this being the fastest 1 through 85 roster Texas has had, is the one thing he said at SEC Media Days, because I know that the teams are coming out. We got to get to the second half here. But the one thing he said was year 1, there was 2 leaders, Bijan and Roshan. Last year, 5 or 6 leaders. He said this year, 20, 19, 20, 25 leaders in this program. So the staff feels very confident where they're at with the team, the players helping run the team and the program to a certain extent. I think that always breeds a lot of confidence in coaching staffs when they know they have talent.
Good stuff. One other super chat real quick before we get to the second half. This one from Jack. Thank you, Jack. As always, if we get French and Lockett to join Wingo, will that signal a change in Sark's approach to wideouts since they are bigger bodies?
No, because look, DeCorian Moore is the number one guy. Oh man, I said it. Golly, it was the number one guy on the board, no doubt. And Texas wanted Kelshawn Johnson. No, they're the speed component. Now, Jamie French is faster than people think. He's going to be like A.D. Mitchell. He's always going to be faster than people think. Just remember this: when you watch him in high school, half of his games are on grass. And I'm just telling you, I lived in Florida. I did these games on high school football on TV down there for years. This grass isn't what you're thinking about. It's not a fairway in Augusta, okay? It's not that type of grass. This is these aren't the best fields these guys play on. He's faster than you think he is. So he's going to be, and I'm not saying he's going to run 4.35 at the combine, but A.D. Mitchell was faster than people thought he was. And I think Jamie French plays fast. So no, I don't think that at all. I just think those are Jamie French is just a tremendous football player. I think first and foremost, like A.D. Mitchell. I think that there's guys that are like that play fast, that maybe play fast and they're going to time. So no, I don't think there's signals a change. I just think it's trying to put the best pieces you can together, because I do think a guy like Khalil Lockett, it's why you see A&M and Alabama and LSU and Texas going after a guy like Khalil Lockett. He may not run away vertically from people, but you're going to be playing against taller, longer defensive backs on average in the SEC. So that having a guy that has that catch radius, those 10.5, 11-inch hands, he has 11. That ability to have great body control and go find a football in the air and win some contested matchups, there's a need for that in this conference.
All right. Well, we made it through halftime without any wardrobe malfunctions, thankfully. So let's get to the second half here with defense and defensive line. You said down on this one. I mean,
yeah, look, just like I don't think you can adequately replace guys like Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell. I don't think you can adequately replace leaders and players like Byron Murphy and T'Vondre Sweat, no matter what you go do in the portal. Very similar for me. Now, the difference is I think the overall skill level and upside, et cetera, in the wide receiver room, there's more depth at a high level there. I always go back and liken this. If I were to give the defensive tackles a year ago, the first stringers, I would give a 100. You didn't miss a spelling word. You got a 100 last year. T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. This year, I expect them to be an 80 or an 85. They may miss 3 out of 20 or something like that and get an 85. It's just a little different because I don't think the top end is as elite, at least not right now. That being said, I told y'all this yesterday. I went back and watched the Texas Tech game over the weekend. I liked what Alfred Collins did late in the season a lot. Very good pass rusher. So I think there are some elements there. Jeray Bledsoe hopefully has come on. And then you add the 3 transfers to that group that should give you numbers. I think that Sark has done a good job of getting the room in shape for this season, but you just don't have Byron Murphy and T'Vondre Sweat. So, yeah, I think it's a little down year over year. And expecting anything more, I think, is expecting too much.
Yeah, so I think you're not going to have frontline guys like Sweat and Murphy. And somebody said in the comments that going into the year, a lot of people, I think I can't remember what I said. I'm sure I did. That Texas would be a little bit of a drop off there when you lost Coburn, Ojimo.
Yeah,
you knew Byron Murphy was a good player. There's a reason he wasn't mocked in first rounds, right? Before a season. So he kind of zipped past expectations and went to the first round as a under-heighted defensive tackle. I think depth-wise this year, they're in a better place to sustain injury than last year.
Now that's true.
So, I mean, look, the interesting thing talking to Jim Nagy at the Senior Bowl was they have Jermaine Lole with an NFL draftable grade headed into the season. That's coming off of 3 surgeries and a couple of missed years. That's based off of what he did at Louisville last year. That's a pretty good sign for Texas if Lole stays healthy. That means you have 2 guys with draftable grades and you have a couple of free agent guys with that. But then, you get down to you have guys, Alfred Collins has now he's played 4 years of Power 5 football. Lole the same, Norton the same, Savea the same. So you have a lot of experience. Vernon Broughton the same, right? Dre Bledsoe has as much talent as anybody outside of maybe Alfred Collins, just gifted talent, and he may have more. Let's see how he looks in year 3. This should be the year he starts to take his step, if he's going to take the big step to being the NFL prospect he talent-wise says he should be. And then you have Aaron Bryant, who I think is going to be solid against the run. I mean, you got to remember, he made an official visit to Georgia. Now, he wasn't a 1 for Georgia. He was a 2. But a 2 for Georgia is a pretty good prospect. So I think that's something to keep in mind. So I think the depth is better there to sustain injury more so than last year as far as where they're at headed into the season.
Let's jump over to the edges. And you put up. Is that because of the additions, I would imagine?
Way up.
Yeah, this is the one that I'm most sure is going to be better year over year. Like if you were to ask me, even more so, and by a wider margin than quarterback, right? We've talked about quarterback and offensive line being an upward trajectory. This is the one position, if you had, gun to my head, got to make a decision, Bobby, what are you going to do? This is the one position where I would say this is most likely to be much better than a year ago. Not only do you have your top 3 guys returning in Sorrell, Burke, and Justice Finkley, you also add 3 guys, 2 of whom, one from Colin Simmons out of high school, who I think can be a pass rush guy, Trey Moore, another pass rush guy. But I also think the emergence of Colton Vasek is underrated here because he can play the run and the pass a little bit, Jerry. He's a little bit like a plus version potentially of Justice Finkley, if that makes sense. Like Justice is not a great pass rusher, right? He is a run against a run guy. Vasek could be both. And it just gives you a little bit more versatility. It gives you more pass rush ability, and it adds people to the rotation and keeps them fresher. To your point, and I want to go back. I know we talked about the defensive edge there. I want to go back to something Jerry said and agree with him strongly. A injury to Murphy or Sweat a year ago would have been, I don't want to say catastrophic, but they didn't have much behind them. An injury to a starter on the defensive line this year, I don't think would it be as catastrophic because they did get more numbers. But edge is the biggest position increase and most assured one, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think edge is. I'm not going to go long on this. Way better. Sorrell, I think, is maybe the most consistent player in the Texas program over his course of time, especially his last couple of years. So I think that is, what you got with Sorrell. I think Ethan Burke, he made the big jump year 1 to year 2. If he continues to ascend, not that big, for year 1 to year 2 is your biggest jump, continues to ascend a little bit year 3. But I think Trey Moore's an NFL draft prospect. I think Colin Simmons could be a high-end NFL draft prospect. So it's just different twitch. It's different edge ability. It's different pass rush ability. Then Vasek, if he stays healthy, I'm always going to say if he stays healthy, anybody who's been injured more than they've been healthy in their time in Texas, we have to say if he stays healthy until he proves over time that he's past that bad luck injury stuff. And then Justice Finkley's a very solid player. Zena, a young kid in the program, again, up to 260 from 235. If there were a couple of injuries, you'd feel, okay, this guy could be physically ready to go play. I think Texas is in such a better spot there. And I think the other thing that makes edge a lot better, real quick, I think you can see Sorrell, Burke, Trey Moore on the field at the same time some this year. They tinkered with it in spring practice, or even Colin Simmons playing those guys as an outside linebacker more so. Texas didn't truly have that ability last year and use those guys as pass rushers. They have that ability this year. A little bit more in the tank defensively from a scheme standpoint this year.
Before we or actually, let's go on to the linebackers here. You have down, Bobby, on that one. Why do you feel that way?
Oh, I think that is the one position I have probably the most questions. Like, I know what Texas is going to try to do at wide receiver to the point of they're going to throw more people at it and see who rises to the top among these guys that they've got. I know what they're going to do at tight end. I know what they're going to do at running back. At linebacker, I'm not sure what they're going to do, Jerry. Other than they've got 3 guys back that they're very confident in Anthony Hill, Mo Blackwell, David Benda. You add Leonga Lafau to that group, I think, and add Darian Gillette. Both of those guys a year older, which should be valuable. The question is, who's going to be the guy in the middle? I mean, Jalen Ford started for 3 years. And is Anthony Hill that guy or not? And until proven that he is that middle linebacker, I went down a little bit. Now, could I be wrong? Absolutely. Absolutely could be wrong here. I think that it all depends. It is almost singularly dependent on Anthony Hill's ability to become a true linebacker as opposed to just a ball hunter and disruptor. If he's able to do that while still maintaining his ability to be a disruptor, you have a All-American is what you have. And then there's no question in my mind that Texas is better at linebacker. But going into the year with that question, you have to err on the side of caution, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I go slightly better. I think the versatility to play a Trey Moore, the versatility to play Colin Simmons in some pass rush packages is interesting. I think Leon Lafau is a good player. See, one of the things too is Jalen Ford didn't have the senior year we thought he would. So I think that kind of changes the calculus on last year versus this year. I think if Jalen Ford had the senior year we probably expected him to have, then I wouldn't be making the argument that could be slightly better. I think Anthony Hill, to Bobby's point, he goes from second team SEC media pick to first team SEC performer if he does all that. I think he becomes a true All-American, All-SEC level player. And by the way, I think when I look at the Texas team, in quarterback, you always take that away and move on from that. If there's one player that Texas has to have stay healthy this year, it's probably Anthony Hill. If not him, it's Manny Muhammad. So I think Leon Lafau in year 2. I think Maurice Blackwell at 220. I think David Benda coming back for one more year. The leadership, the communication. One area I think this linebacker team is going to be, the group is going to be really good. I think Benda and I think Hill are going to be extremely strong communicators at the position. So kind of making it all work, putting it all together, people on the same page. I think we don't talk about that stuff. We haven't mentioned, somebody brought up Akana. Could Akana be a third down pass rush specialist from outside linebacker position? We'll see, right? Does he need another year to put on some more armor, as Rod says? But I think it'll be interesting. So I think the versatility with this group is better than it was last year. I think the pure talent, height, weights, athleticism is better. Darian Gillette, some of those guys. We'll see how they play.
Just a lot of know-how they're losing with Jalen Ford. That's a good way to put it. A lot of know-how.
And then last but not least for the defense is the defensive backs, and really nowhere to go but up.
True.
Correct?
True. Yeah, I'll start there. Look, I think safety is a huge upgrade. Makuba coming in, obviously, very experienced player at a really good program, the best non-portal program in the history of college football. But really good player coming from a strong program. That's a big upgrade. Derek Williams in year 2 is going to be an upgrade over Derek Williams in year 1. And just think back to what we've said. Think about guys we've talked about. If Derek Williams makes a big year 1 to year 2 jump, think about how different we're going to think about the safety position at Texas. Because you have Makuba, you have Derek Williams if he makes that big jump. but that a lot of guys do year one to year two. Then I think I love the depth, the better depth behind it. And that includes young guys like Xavier Filsaime and Jordan Johnson-Rebel have a spring practice under their belt. You saw them make the freshman mistakes, the young football mistakes. I just think there's more quality depth at the position. Michael Taff, a year older, obviously. Jelani McDonald, we'll see what he looks like come this season. Truly concentrating on a position for the first time for more than a year. See what all that entails. But again, physically, much improved at that position. Keaton Crawford, great athlete, wasn't a safety. He just wasn't. Didn't have the eyes to play safety. It doesn't matter how fast you run. I mean, just doesn't at that position unless if you're not seeing it and reacting to it and instinctively moving towards it, it doesn't matter how fast your 40 is. So I think it's a vastly improved. Corner comes down to Gavin Holmes and Javion Cole. If those guys come through, Manny Muhammad, I think, is going to play like an all SEC caliber level player. Whether that be first team, second team, third team, which in that league means you're a top 34 round draft pick, could be a first rounder. So I think it comes down to Cole, and I think it comes down to Holmes. If those guys play well, then I think corner is going to be improved as well because Manny Muhammad's jumped to year two. The key for me at corner is a fourth guy needs to step up in August. I think nickel's better. Jalen Gilbo healthy. If Jahdae Bear can stay healthy, that position was injured last year a lot of the year. I think both those guys are in better positions physically starting the year.
I would say this. I also said up. I think they're better this year, despite losing not only Jaron Thompson but also Terrence Brooks. I mean, they lose two true starters. I think Derek Williams is a year older as well, as is Manny Muhammad. Those two are going to be fixtures in the Texas secondary. Andrew McCuba is a 3-year starter, Jerry, going back to his more natural position of safety. Jahdae Barron is back. Here's what you mentioned that fourth corner, and a lot of people would say, "Oh, Jahdae Barron could be the fourth corner."
You don't want him to.
No, I think he's an emergency corner. Jahdae has not had that speed since he's had the foot injury to be a big-time corner. That's why a lot of people think he needs to go look at safety a little bit and work at safety, including Rod Babers, right? To get ready for the NFL. That's what Ryan Watts is effectively trying to do now, right? Move to safety for the Steelers. I do think it's better. I think they've got more guys that'll make plays on the ball now. Michael Taff included. Derek Williams will make a play on the ball. Manny Muhammad will make a play on the ball. Jahdae Barron will. Jalen Gilbo will. I feel confident that Javion Cole will. If there is one thing that I expect from the secondary this year with the increased pass rush, it's more takeaways. I think they're going to be more interceptions. So watch for that. Hopefully, they have the personnel also to play a little tighter coverage now. So all of that combined should be an increased or an improved secondary.
And then last but not least, special teams you put down on here. And how come? A lot of folks are probably going to ask that.
Well, it's simple. I mean, you lost Ryan Sanborn and you're giving way to a freshman or a walk-on junior or sophomore. That's really why. It's the punt team and punt return team. And while I think that the punt return team could be close to a push because Silas Bolden is a pretty good returner, I don't think you're going to improve from Xavier Worthy. Maybe Matthew Golden's better than Keelan Robinson. I think he probably is as a kick returner. Bert Auburn's not going to improve on last season. I mean, he hit 19 in a row. You can't get better than that. I mean, if you expect him to improve, I don't know how. He's auditioning for the NFL this year. So, my thinking is special teams will be down a little bit, most likely. And also, I got to say this. Jerry was right about Keaton Crawford, not a safety, in my opinion, long-term. Tremendous special teams player.
Tremendous.
Keelan Robinson, tremendous special teams player.
I mean, you think about
Jelani McDonald and Trey Weiser can't duplicate that. I don't know anybody that can exceed that. I mean, some people said Keaton Crawford had an NFL grade as a special teams guy last year.
Yeah.
By the way,
By the way, Keelan Robinson's one of the better all-around special teams players I've seen at Texas. Okay, gunner, kick return, punt block. I mean, think about all the things that guy did on special teams. I mean, what would he be, a 3-tool guy? There, 5-tool in baseball, right? He'd be a 3-tool guy in special teams. There aren't a lot of those guys, man. He's tremendous. So, but I think the most important 39 in Texas history is coming up in a few weeks, and that's going to be Michael Kern in the punting competition. Texas needs somebody to step up big.
Brian Robinson played 14 or 15 years in the league.
I just said this season.
And won a national title. He's not.
I just said this season.
More important than Brian Robinson. Just don't say it.
Brian might actually agree with that.
Hey, there's some thought that maybe Montrell Estelle might be the most important. That Bo Davis rant got played. So there's that too.
Okay, well, it's about time to take some more questions here. We only got time for just a couple, but before we get to those, Bobby, can you tell the folks out there about Babbel?
Yeah, absolutely, Blake. The best way to learn a language is immersion, living where the language is spoken and using it every day. But if that's not in the cards for you, you can still learn a language the second best way, which is what I do, and that's with Babbel. 1 in 5 Americans have learn a new language on their bucket list. If that's you, make 2024 the year you finally check it off the list with Babbel. Look, want to know, you know what? My take on this is really simple. I try to keep learning each and every day as I grow up and get older. I don't just sit idle and not read, not listen to new things. One of my goals is actually to learn Spanish in a efficient, good way that allows me to converse, not necessarily be fluent, but converse and understand when I go on vacation, when I'm talking to other folks that speak Spanish, etc. I just want to be able to do that and do it well. And that's where Babbel comes in for me. Right now, we have a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, you can get up to 60% off a Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/ontexas. Get up to 60% off. Babbel.com/ontexas, spelled BABBEL.com/ontexas. Rules and restrictions may apply. Again, check it out. Babbel is the place you want to learn another language, whether it's Spanish, German, Italian, etc. Whatever your proclivities may be. I chose Spanish, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Okay, well, as I said, we got time for just a couple of questions, guys, before we get out of here. And I'm going to start with this super chat from Rhett. Thank you, Rhett, for the super chat. He says, I've gone all over the place determining who will start at receiver. Have y'all's opinions changed? I think Wingo might be a starter by the end of the year.
I could definitely see that based on, everything we're hearing. But again, with these young receivers, it's a difficult scheme. So all the pre-snap motion, everything that comes before a play at Texas is sometimes the most difficult part for a young receiver. So I think that, again, is the most important thing for a guy like Ryan Wingo, who has elite talent and different talent than anybody else in the receiver room. I think when you go to Michigan, it's going to be a lot of experience with some of the inexperience mixed in. I think as the season moves along, by the time you get to Mississippi State and then more so even Oklahoma, and that last half of the schedule kicks in, I think the starters may be different than the starters in Michigan at a couple of spots. But here's the thing. He's going to rotate more guys this year. I think more guys are going to play. So I do think it's actually legitimately going to be determined by on-field performance, Bobby. And not that it's not, but I just think it's a different situation at wide receiver. Last year, you kind of knew what you had. You knew who your guys were. Jonte needed a little time to develop there. DeAndre Moore needed a little time to develop in the scheme. So just some things to remember with these young receivers. But I think this year Sark has legitimately 6 guys he's going to play in games.
Maybe 7. Maybe 7. Mine. Look, I think out of the gate, if you had to say, Bobby, what are you really predicting? out of the gate, it would be Cook, Golden, and Bond as starters for me.
Yeah.
Okay. But that leaves Silas Bolden and Ryan Wingo and DeAndre Moore on the bench. Is that really going to happen? Hola, Andy, by the way, as he puts that up. My point being, I think that a lot of this, and from talking to Sark a little bit, it's going to be prove it. It's going to be two things. Prove it to me. Don't drop the ball. Be in the right place. Block your butt off. Do the little things that help us win. You're more likely to get a chance to play more. Okay. So that's one. The second thing that, and I talked with Rod about this at length the other day, Jerry and Blake, are they going to have platoons? So that was one of the things that Sark kind of, I don't want to say hinted at. He talked a little bit about it, like who works well with one another.
Yeah.
And maybe you want Ryan Wingo or Matthew Golden out there blocking at times. So you don't play them together, right? You actually play them in different rotations. That is part of what I think might be the eventual solution, is a little bit of a rotation where you're playing them in platoons, not necessarily interchangeable parts long term. So what we see the first 2 weeks of the season, to Jerry's point, I think there's going to be some experience on the field. After that, I think all bets are off. And I'll just go back to say it. Ryan Wingo, Jerry said, yes, there is a lot of mental breakdowns, et cetera, that you need for Sark's offense, or mental acuity for Sark's offense as a wide receiver. I'm just being told that every test Ryan Wingo has been given, he keeps passing with flying colors. It hasn't stopped since he arrived on campus. And it's continued in the spring, and it's continued in the summer. Who the hell knows what he's going to look like in 3 months? He has a chance to be special. Is it going to happen this year or in future years? Don't know.
And last question for today, fellas, and there's no doubt the guys you mentioned will get a lot of passes thrown to them, but what about the big men? That's what Donald Brett wants to know. He wants you to call your shot. Which defensive lineman will score the first touchdown, whether it be receiving or pick six?
I'll go with
Collins. Did it in the spring game.
Yeah, he's up. He should have kept that one. He should have fallen on the 5. Let's see. I'll say Jared Bledsoe.
No, you went with the athlete. I'll say, how about Ethan Burke?
No, well, that's edge though. We can't do that. We're talking.
Can't do that. Okay, I'll go with. I'll tell you who might be a lead blocker based on just their body type is Bill Norton. So Go with that one.
Okay, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football. We want to thank Gooder, along with Babbel and BetterHelp, for sponsoring today's show. Thank you all for the great questions, the super chats. A lot of stuff going on over at ontexasfootball.com. So if you're not a member, be sure to use promo code OTFOG. You'll get a full year for $39.95. And hey, with 39 days away from kickoff, there's no better time than now to go sign up. That way you're not missing any news. And then also be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And we got you covered on the YouTube front as well. And speaking of that, Bobby, anything guys coming on ontexasfootball.com or the channel later today y'all want to plug?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a lot of different stuff going on. Jerry and CJ are going to tape recruiting breakdown here in a few hours and put that up. The Thursday pool party / barbecue looms pretty large, especially if there's some surprise visitors like we discussed earlier. Jonah Williams also expected to be on campus, as well as Michael Terry, a young man out of Alamo Heights. There's a lot of intrigue, I think, around that right now. And then later this evening, we also have the live stream with Rod Babers, Aaron Hogan, and CJ Vogt.
So good stuff all day.
Oh, by the way, I have 2025 hoops recruiting update on ontexasfootball.com because we can't get to everything there.
There you go. So, like I said, no better time to become a member. Be sure. Promo code OTFOG at ontexasfootball.com. And for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see